Am I the a-hole for hiding the truth about my wife's infidelity and then using it to ruin her life years later when I realized the full extent of what she'd done? I'm not sure what I'm trying to achieve by writing this. Maybe I'm hoping for some kind of validation. Maybe I just need someone to tell me I'm not the monster everyone says I am. Or maybe I just need to get this out before I implode from the weight of it. This is a confession I've kept buried for over 6 years now. 6 years of torturing myself over whether I did the right thing. 6 years of living with this searing secret that has eaten away at my soul, and I don't think I can carry it much longer. Here's the truth. I, 37 me, married the woman of my dreams, Jessica, 35F, when we were both in our late 20s. We met in college, but it wasn't the kind of college romance that fizzles out. We were inseparable. I was always the quieter one, the studious one, while she was the social butterfly, everyone's friend. She made me feel alive in ways I never thought possible. When she looked at me, it was like I was the only person in the world. She made me laugh. She made me feel like I was everything to her. We got married just 2 years after graduation, and our lives together were almost perfect. I loved her deeply, and I trusted her completely. We had the kind of relationship where we talked about everything, shared everything, and I thought we were each other's rock. But everything started to unravel after she got pregnant with our first child. Things didn't change immediately. At first, she was still my Jessica, still the woman I fell in love with, still the fun-loving, spontaneous soul who would dance around the living room with me at midnight, still the person I wanted to build a life with. But as the pregnancy went on, something started to shift. She became more withdrawn. We didn't talk as much. She seemed distant, irritated, unresponsive to my touch. I didn't understand it at first. I told myself it was the hormones, the stress of pregnancy. I tried to be patient. I gave her space. But then, during one of her prenatal visits, I saw something that would forever alter the course of our lives. I went to the doctor's office with her that day. I don't know why. I just felt like I needed to be there. It was a routine checkup. But for some reason, I sat in the waiting room instead of joining her in the examination room. She'd forgotten her phone, so I just sat there, scrolling mindlessly through my own messages. Then my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. But when I answered, the voice on the other end made my blood run cold. It was her best friend, Samantha, 34F. She sounded panicked. She asked if I had been in the room with Jessica during her last appointment. Confused, I told her I was waiting in the waiting room. She immediately started talking in circles, saying something about getting out, and we need to talk. I asked what the hell she was talking about, and after a long pause, she said, "It's not what you think, but I need to tell you something about Jessica. Something she's been hiding from you. It's big, and it's bad. And I don't know what to do." Before I could respond, she hung up. My heart started racing. I don't know what compelled me, but I left the waiting room and slipped into the examination area. I crept down the hallway, trying to be as quiet as possible, but when I passed Jessica's doctor's office, I froze. There, through the crack. In the door, I saw Jessica standing with Dr. Henson, laughing, her hand on his shoulder, too intimately. I knew they were close, but this was different. I couldn't explain it, but everything inside me screamed that something was wrong. I backed away slowly, barely breathing. I didn't confront her immediately. I wasn't sure what to think. The next few days, I kept it to myself, watching her, analyzing her every move. Was she acting differently? Had she been acting differently? Was I just paranoid? I wasn't paranoid. I found the proof I needed a week later. I came home early from work one afternoon, hoping to surprise her. I unlocked the door to find her phone on the kitchen counter, vibrating with an incoming message. I wasn't proud of what I did next. I knew I shouldn't have looked, but I did. I opened her messages, and what I found sent me into a spiral that I still haven't fully recovered from. It was a text from Dr. Henson, the same doctor I had seen in the hallway. It was explicit. It detailed an affair that had been going on for months, long before she ever got pregnant. The texts were filled with passionate language, with promises of forever and leaving him, and we can make it work. I went cold. I couldn't breathe. I collapsed onto the kitchen floor, staring at the screen, the words swimming in front of me like they were trying to suffocate me. She had been seeing him. My wife, the woman I loved with everything I had been having an affair with her OB-GYN. The man I trusted to take care of her, to bring our child into the world, had been in her bed. I wanted to confront her then, to scream, to shout, to demand an explanation. But something inside me told me to wait. I needed to know everything. So I kept quiet. I pretended I didn't know. I gave her space even though I was dying inside. I watched her every move, every word, every little thing she did. It was during one of these nights a week later that I found the final piece of the puzzle. We had gone to a party with friends, and I watched her laughing, talking to people, looking completely normal, completely untouched by what she had done. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I followed her to the bathroom, cornered her, and demanded the truth. She denied it at first, but when I showed her the texts, she broke down. She admitted everything. She told me it had started as something casual, that it had been a mistake, that she was sorry. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when she told me she wasn't even sure who the father of our child was. She'd been sleeping with Dr. Henson and another guy at the same time. She said she couldn't resist him, that he just understood her better, that he was there for her in ways I wasn't. My whole world crumbled. I asked her if she ever loved me. She didn't answer. I asked her if she had ever been faithful, even once. Again, no answer. She just cried, looking at me with those same eyes that once made me feel safe, and said, "I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen." But here's where it gets darker. I didn't leave her right away. I didn't confront anyone else. Instead, I did something far worse. I stayed silent. I stayed in the marriage for years. I pretended everything was fine. I let her think that I had forgiven her. But deep down, I was plotting my revenge. I wanted to destroy her life the way she had destroyed mine. I watched her, I manipulated her, and I played the perfect husband on the outside, all the while waiting for the right moment to reveal everything. And I did. 4 years later, I exposed her. I sent an anonymous email to her family, to all of our friends, to Dr. Henson's wife, to the press. I made sure everyone knew about the affair, about the lies, about the child that might not even be mine. It all came crashing down. She lost her job, her friends, her family. I didn't care. I knew I had ruined her life, but the most twisted part? It didn't feel like enough. I wanted more. I wanted her to feel the isolation I had felt, the betrayal, the nothingness. Now, after all this, after everything I've done to destroy her, I'm left standing here wondering if I'm the monster. Am I the a-hole for taking things this far, for letting her fall so hard, for letting her lose everything? Maybe I should have let it go. Maybe I should have walked away. But now that everything is out in the open, I'm left asking myself, did I do the right thing? Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for turning my mother in to the police after discovering what she did to my father and realizing who I really am? I don't know how to write this in any way that makes sense. My mind has been spiraling for weeks, spinning around facts that contradict everything I ever believed about myself, my family, my entire life, and I've reached a point where I need to share this, or I'm going to lose my grip entirely. I, 32F, always believed my father died of a heart attack when I was 10. That was the story. That's what I was told. I remember the night clearly, or at least what I thought I remembered. My mother shaking me awake in the middle of the night, eyes swollen from crying, telling me Daddy had gone to heaven. The funeral was closed casket. I cried for weeks. I was a daddy's girl through and through. He was gentle, patient, funny in a quiet way. He'd sneak me chocolates and draw little cartoons in my lunchbox notes. He worked long hours in IT, but still made time to braid my hair every morning before school because Mom was always too tired. After he died, something inside me shifted. The house became colder. My mother was never affectionate, but after his death, she became emotionally glacial, icy, irritable, impatient. She snapped at me constantly. She drank more. She isolated us from family. I chalked it up to grief. I pitied her. I forgave her outbursts. As I grew older, I worked hard to make her proud. Straight A's, scholarships, law school. But her approval was always just out of reach, like trying to catch smoke in your hands. Fast forward to a month ago. I got a call from an old family friend, my dad's cousin, Uncle Ray. He's in his 70s now, lives a few towns over. He said he had something he needed to give me, something my father wanted me to have when I was old enough to understand. I was confused. What could possibly be left after all these years? I drove out the next day. Uncle Ray lives alone in a cluttered house filled with old papers and dusty memorabilia. He handed me a worn leather journal, my father's. Apparently, he'd mailed it to Ray for safekeeping a few months before his death. Inside were entries that shattered my reality. My father believed my mother was trying to kill him. The journal documented months of symptoms: dizziness, numbness, nausea, hallucinations. He'd gone to multiple doctors, all baffled. He'd even started secretly recording conversations with my mother, which he transcribed in the journal. One entry described her bringing him tea that tasted metallic. Another recounted waking up to her standing over him, just watching him breathe. There were entries where he second-guessed himself, worried he was paranoid, but others where he sounded lucid, terrified, convinced she was poisoning him. His last entry was 3 days before his death. It read, "If something happens to me, check the tea, check the pills. Don't let her get away with it." I didn't know what to believe. My stomach turned as I flipped through the pages. I took the journal home and sat on it for days. Then I did something that cracked the whole thing open. I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for my father's autopsy report. It took some paperwork, some legal maneuvering, but eventually I got it. The cause of death was listed as myocardial infarction, but the toxicology report, barely glanced at, noted trace amounts of a rare compound, thallium, not common, not something found in everyday environments, not investigated further. The case was closed before it started. No one questioned it, no one wanted to. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I went to the police, gave them the journal, the autopsy report. They were skeptical at first, 32 years later, but something in the journal matched a cold case they had sitting in storage. Another man, same town, same symptoms, died, in similar circumstances in the late 80s. A man my mother used to work with, a man she allegedly had an affair with. That's when the investigation opened, quietly, discreetly. They didn't even tell me what they were doing at first, just that they were looking into it. Then they called me 2 weeks ago. They'd arrested her. They searched her house, the one I grew up in, now hers alone, and found an old locked box buried in the attic insulation. Inside were vials, syringes, photographs, a second journal. Hers, a mirror to my father's, but this one written with no remorse. Pages and pages of rage. She wrote about how he trapped her with the pregnancy, how she gave up everything to be a wife and mother, how she fantasized about slipping something into his drink, then how she actually did. She described his symptoms day by day, his confusion, his fear. She mocked him, wrote about how no one would ever believe someone as gentle as her could do something so calculated. But the part that broke me was an entry dated a week before his death. "He keeps asking about a paternity test. Idiot. She's not even his. Not fully. He doesn't realize the man he suspects is closer to the truth than he thinks. Let them both die with their secrets." I read that line 100 times. She's not even his. I demanded a DNA test immediately. I had to know. And it confirmed what I feared. My biological father was not the man I loved, the man who raised me, the man she murdered, as it was someone else. They haven't told me who yet. They're still working through the forensic side. But apparently there was an affair, and the man she believed to be my real father died by suicide 2 years after mine did. Another potential coincidence. It's possible she had something to do with that too. I confronted her in jail. I don't know why. Closure, maybe. She looked at me like I was a stranger, smiled with this vacant smugness and said, "I always wondered if you'd grow the balls to dig." I asked her if she ever loved him, or me. She didn't answer, just leaned back and said, "You were a mistake I cleaned up well." I left shaking. Now, my family is shattered. The relatives who are left, most of whom she distanced us from, are reeling. Some blame me, others are horrified. I'm the one who brought it all to light after all. The one who turned her in. The daughter who sent her mother to prison. And here's the worst part, I don't even feel guilty, I feel free. But late at night I do wonder. I wonder if there was another way. If letting sleeping monsters lie would have preserved the illusion. if I should have protected the memory of my father by not dragging this into the open. But then I remember his journal, his last entry, his voice, and I know I did the only thing I could, so read it. Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for letting my twin brother take the fall for a crime I committed, and then marrying his fiancée while he rotted in prison? I've never written anything online before, and I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not here for karma or validation. I just need to put this somewhere, because the guilt is now a physical thing, like a tumor sitting on my chest, growing heavier every day. I, 36 GMS, have a twin brother named Tyler. We were inseparable from birth, identical in looks, polar opposites, in personality. He was golden, magnetic, charming in ways that felt effortless. People gravitated toward him. He didn't even try. Girls loved him. Teachers praised him. Coaches begged him to play. Meanwhile, I existed in the margins. I was the shadow twin, quieter, sharper, colder. I could read people better than he could, but I never had the light to attract them. Tyler didn't just have the spotlight. He was the spotlight. And I told myself I didn't mind. I told myself I was fine being the architect behind the curtain, that I didn't crave what he had. But that was a lie. The unraveling began in our early 20s. We both got jobs in the same city after college, him in sales, me in data analytics. He was engaged to this luminous woman named Elise, sweet, gorgeous, grounded. I loved her, instantly, not romantically at first, but watching her with him, watching how gently she loved him, something inside me shifted. Elise never made me feel like I was second place. She saw me, asked me questions, remembered my coffee order, laughed at my deadpan jokes. It was nothing until it wasn't, until I found myself inventing reasons to stop by their apartment, until I started watching the way her hand lingered on his shoulder and wondering what it would feel like if it were mine. I didn't try anything, not then. I respected boundaries, but a seed had been planted. And resentment was beginning to fester. The crime was an accident, sort of. We'd gone out drinking to celebrate Tyler's promotion. Elise was out of town visiting her mother. It was just the two of us, like old times. He got wasted. I stayed. Sober. Someone had to drive. On the way home, he begged me to let him drive his new car, said he could handle it. I refused. He sulked. We argued. Eventually, I gave in. A few minutes later, we hit something. Hard. A man on a bike. An older guy, late 50s. He flew across the hood. Tyler panicked, slammed the brakes. The guy wasn't moving. Blood everywhere. I checked his pulse. Nothing. Tyler started screaming. I told him to shut up, that we needed to think. It was 2 a.m., no witnesses. A dark stretch of road. The car was his. The registration, the insurance, all in his name. It would be easy to say. He was driving. Hell, he was supposed to be. That was the plan. But then I looked at him, shaking, crying, incoherent, and I saw it. The vulnerability, the weakness. I realized in that moment I had a choice. I could confess, I could do the right thing, or I could let it happen. I told him to drive home, that I'd take care of everything. I wiped down the car, ditched my jacket and gloves, took the blame before he could even get his story straight. The police came 2 days later. I gave them the story Tyler and I had rehearsed. I said I was behind the wheel. I said the man came out of nowhere, that it was dark, that I panicked. I was arrested, charged with vehicular manslaughter. I expected a plea deal, maybe a year or two, but the victim was someone important, a retired fire chief. The media latched on. Suddenly I was a monster, a privileged kid who killed a hero. The DA wanted blood. I got 7 years. Tyler visited once. He cried the whole time, thanked me, promised he'd take care of everything. Said he'd keep Elise close, that he'd make sure my job wasn't lost. I smiled, I nodded, but something in me curled in rage. He got to keep his life, his job, his fiancée. I got a cell, a metal bed, and a cellmate who screamed in his sleep. The letters from Elise started 6 months in. Just friendly at first. Updates about life. About how she missed me. About how Tyler was struggling. She signed them with little hearts. I wrote back carefully, slowly. She kept writing. The letters got longer, then more intimate. She started visiting just to check in. Tyler didn't know. At least not at first. We kissed on her 4th visit. By the end of my 2nd year, she said she was in love with me. Said she felt it all along. That I was the one who saw her. That Tyler had become distant. That he was drinking more, sleeping around, that he'd changed. I told her I'd always loved her. That I took the fall for him because she deserved better than a man like that. And she believed me. When I got out, after 5 years for good behavior, Elise was waiting. Tyler wasn't. He'd moved across the country, taken a job in Oregon. We hadn't spoken in 2 years. Elise and I started over, slowly, carefully. We told friends it had started after my release, that the grief brought us close, that we found comfort in each other. People whispered, of course, but not loudly. We married 2 years later. Had a daughter last spring, named her Lily. She's perfect, and for a while I believed I had won. But then last week, I got a letter from Tyler. He knows. He knows everything. Apparently, Elise confessed, out of guilt or maybe fear. She told him when they met for coffee last month after years of silence. She told him about the letters, the visits, the wedding, the child. The letter wasn't angry. That's the worst part. It wasn't a threat. It was understanding, almost pitying. He said he forgave me, that he knew what I did was wrong, but that he also knew I had always been in his shadow, that he had taken so much for granted, that he didn't hate me, that he hoped we could rebuild one day. That broke me. I would have preferred rage, violence. Her threat, but this quiet grace, I couldn't handle it. Now I look at Lily and I see her smile, his smile. I look at Elise and I wonder if she ever truly chose me, or if I was just the closest replacement when the golden twin disappeared. Sometimes I dream about the crash. I see the man's body, hear the crunch, wake up with my hands shaking. I wonder if I deserve this family, this life. So I ask you, Reddit, am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for secretly paying my sister to be my wife for 5 years and lying to everyone about our miracle baby? Throwaway, obviously. I've never written something like this before. I've held this in for years. I buried it beneath layers of lies, guilt, and justifications. I thought I could take it to the grave, but I can't. Not after what happened last month, not after what I saw in my daughter's eyes. Maybe you'll hate me. Maybe you'll understand. But I need someone, anyone, to hear the full story. 38 men have always been different, not in the quirky or socially awkward way, but in the hollow sense. The kind of different that makes therapists write long notes and doctors whisper behind glass. My earliest memories are of observing rather than participating. Kids laughed and cried. I mimicked them. Teachers praised me for being brilliant. I knew I wasn't. I just noticed patterns. I could predict emotions before I felt them. I got through most of school without ever really connecting with anyone. I tried therapy twice. Both times, I quit. I didn't want to be fixed. I wanted to blend in. The first person I ever truly felt something for was my younger sister, Rachel, 36F. I know how that sounds. I know how your stomach might have dropped. But hear me out. We weren't raised as siblings. Rachel was adopted when I was 14 and she was 12. She came from a broken home. Our parents were her foster parents first, then adopted her a year later. We were legally siblings, yes, but biologically, nothing. And emotionally, I didn't see her as my sister, not even then. At first, I was indifferent. She was quiet, guarded, like a stray cat waiting for someone to kick her. Our parents were strict, almost militaristic. Rachel didn't take well to that. She was always walking on eggshells, desperate to earn affection that never came. I began watching her, not creepily but curiously. She fascinated me. Her anger, her defiance, her softness when no one was looking. I started defending her when our parents got too harsh. Then I started helping her lie. Then, at some point, I started craving her presence. By the time we were adults, our bond was intense. Too intense. We moved out together when I was 21, and she was 19. Our parents disapproved but couldn't stop us. We told people we were roommates, then housemates. Then we stopped explaining altogether. We lived together for nearly a decade. People asked questions. We dodged them. We dated other people, but always came back to each other. Nothing physical ever happened, but emotionally, we were completely entwined. Then came the inheritance. Our grandfather, a man neither of us particularly knew, died and left me a sizable amount of money under one condition. I had to be married by 30 and have a stable family life. It was a bizarre clause, but the will was airtight. The executor was our uncle, who hated my side of the family and would have loved to invalidate the whole thing. I had less than a year to make it happen. I panicked. Rachel, ever the pragmatist, proposed a solution. What if we just get married? She was half joking. I wasn't. I said yes, no hesitation. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but when I told her it was just a legal technicality, a sham marriage just on paper, she softened. She asked what she'd get out of it. I offered her a quarter of the inheritance up front, and a full half if we made it 5 years. She agreed. We got married in Vegas 3 weeks later, told no one, not even our parents. And for a while it worked. People thought we were roommates still, or maybe assumed we were dating and just didn't say anything. We were careful. Separate. Bedrooms. No public displays of affection. She even dated a co-worker during that time. But then, we got careless. We moved to a new city. Told people we were married. Easier that way. Started getting invited to couples events, brunches, retreats. When people saw how close we were, they envied it. I started to enjoy it, and I started wanting more. I told Rachel we should have a kid, that we should make the act convincing. She laughed, thought I was joking. I wasn't. I told her I'd pay her another quarter of the inheritance if she agreed. I said she could use a donor. She refused, said this was too far, that she wasn't going to raise a lie. I didn't push again. Not for 6 months. Then she got fired from her job. Depression hit, her savings ran out, and I offered again, this time with more money and more promises. I told her I'd do everything. She wouldn't have to raise the child if she didn't want to. She could live in the house, keep her freedom, and I'd raise the kid as mine. Legally, emotionally, everything. She agreed. We used IVF. I paid for the best clinic. I even signed legal documents that absolved her of long-term responsibility. It was her egg, a donor's sperm, and my money. The embryo took on the second round. 9 months later, she gave birth to a baby girl, Emily. And that's when everything changed. The moment I saw Emily's face, I shattered. All those years of emptiness, of detachment, of mimicking emotion, it all broke. I felt something real for the first time in my life. I loved her. Absolutely, unconditionally. She was perfect. Rachel, on the other hand, collapsed. Postpartum. Hit her like a freight train. She couldn't look at Emily without crying. She moved out 3 months later, told me she was done, said she couldn't live the lie anymore. I begged her to stay. She said no, took the last of the money and left. That was 5 years ago. I've raised Emily alone ever since. I told everyone. She was our miracle baby. That Rachel struggled with fertility for years, and that we finally succeeded. No one questioned it. Not our new neighbors, not Emily's teachers. Not even Rachel, who disappeared entirely. No calls, no letters, no visits until last month. She showed up at Emily's school, out of nowhere. Claimed she wanted to see her daughter. The school, unaware of the backstory, called me. I raced there and found Rachel standing outside, watching Emily through the window. She looked different, healthier, stronger, but also sad. We argued. I told her to leave. She said she made a mistake, that she wanted back in Emily's life. I told her she forfeited that right. She said she's the biological mother. I told her the documents say otherwise. She asked if Emily knew. I said no. She asked if I planned to tell her. I said I wasn't sure. And then she dropped a bomb. She's dying ovarian cancer, late stage, untreatable, months left, maybe a year. She begged me to let her be part of Emily's life before it's too late. She said she wanted to tell her the truth, that Emily deserves to know where she came from. I said no. She left in tears, and now I can't sleep. Emily has started asking questions. Why are there no baby photos of Rachel holding her? Why do none of our wedding photos look real? Why did Rachel call herself Mommy outside the school? I don't know what to do. If I tell Emily the truth, I destroy the life she knows. I expose the lie I built. I risk her resenting me, hating me. But if I don't, she might never forgive me when she finds out later, or worse, from someone else. Rachel has started sending letters, drawings, videos. I haven't shown them to Emily. I don't know if I should. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for letting my brother believe his child died at birth, when she actually didn't, and raising her as my own? This story is going to sound monstrous. I know that. I've been living with it for the past 11 years. But before anyone crucifies me, please just read the whole thing. I need to know, was there any part of what I did that could be considered right? Or am I just the villain who destroyed an entire family on 42M? Have a daughter, Ellie, who just turned 11. She is the light of my life, the only reason. I get out of bed some days and the single best thing that's ever happened to me. She's sweet, curious, brilliant, and she looks like my late wife, which both breaks and heals my heart in strange waves. I still haven't learned to surf. But the truth is, she isn't my biological daughter, and she's not adopted either. Not in any legal sense. She's my niece, my brother's biological daughter, and he thinks she's dead. To backtrack, my younger brother Dave, now 39, has always been the golden child. Handsome, athletic, effortlessly charming. He never had to work for attention. People just gravitated toward him. I was the quiet one, the studious one, the one people forgot was even in the room. We were never close. He called me Professor, in that condescending way even when we were kids. But he was blood, so I tolerated him. I loved him in that obligatory way you love family even when you don't particularly like them. 11 years ago, Dave was dating a woman named Marissa. She was unlike any of his previous girlfriends. Soft-spoken, artistic, emotionally intelligent. I met her once, then offered to hang her art in my office at the university. She blushed. Dave teased her for it, said something like, "Don't. Get flattered. My brother's never even touched a woman." That was the kind of person he was. Long story short, Marissa got pregnant. Dave was furious. Not because of the pregnancy itself, but because it would tie him down. He begged her to get an abortion. She refused. He threatened to leave. She still refused. He broke up with her a month before Ellie was due and ghosted her entirely. Changed his number. Blocked her on everything. Told our family that she was a crazy clinger who was faking a baby for attention. Only I knew the truth, because Marissa reached out to me. She was scared, alone, estranged from her family. She'd recently found out there were some complications with the pregnancy, and the baby might need immediate NICU care. She had no one. So I stepped in. I drove her to appointments. I held her hand during ultrasounds. And when she went into early labor at 36 weeks, it was me sitting beside her in the hospital. The delivery was rough. Ellie was born tiny, barely breathing. They rushed her to the NICU before Marissa even got to hold her. I sat in the hallway while she sobbed. And then she died. Not the baby. Marissa. Massive hemorrhaging. They couldn't stop it. Within an hour of delivering Ellie, Marissa was gone. Just like that. I was in shock. But while the nurses tried to reach her family, who never showed, I was told something else. The baby was going to make it. Fragile, yes, but stable. Alive. The hospital asked what to do. They had no emergency contact, no listed father, no legal guardian. CPS would be called by the next morning unless someone stepped in. I should have called my brother. I should have. But I didn't. And I can't even pretend I had a noble reason. I didn't do it because I didn't trust him. I didn't do it because I knew how he'd react. Angry, inconvenienced, resentful. I didn't do it because part of me still hated him for the way he treated her, for how little he seemed to care that he'd abandoned someone so vulnerable, for how he dismissed her like she was nothing. But mostly, I didn't do it because I looked at that baby girl blinking behind an oxygen mask, and I felt something, a surge of protectiveness like I'd never known before. So I lied. I told the hospital I was the father. I knew it would raise eyebrows, but I also knew there was no one to challenge it. I claimed Marissa had listed me privately and that we kept the relationship discreet. I signed the birth certificate, no one pushed back, then I disappeared with her. I moved across the country 3 weeks later, took a position at a different university, told my parents I'd finally adopted a child, something I'd vaguely spoken of before. I cut contact with Dave for nearly 2 years. When we finally reconnected, he had no idea. Why would he? He'd long convinced himself the baby was never real. I raised Ellie as my daughter. I told her mother died in childbirth, which is true. I told her I was her biological father, which is not. I gave her every ounce of love I had. But the guilt, it never left. It just curled into something quiet and constant, like background. Noise you learn to live with. Until last month, Ellie had a medical issue, nothing major, a benign tumor in her leg that needed removal. Routine procedure, but there were complications. The anesthesiologist needed a deeper genetic history because she had an unexpected reaction to the medication. I was forced to admit I didn't have answers, and Ellie is smart. Too smart. She started asking questions. I finally told her, at SU, least part of the truth, that her mom died giving birth to her, and that I wasn't her biological dad. I said her father didn't want to be involved. She asked who he was. I refused to tell her. She pressed. I still refused, and then she went through my office and found an old flash drive, one that had photos of Marissa and a folder labeled Dave Wedding. She Googled him, found his social media, saw his face, saw how much they looked alike. She confronted me in tears. I confessed everything. Now here's where the actual "am I the a-hole" part comes in. Ellie told Dave. She messaged him through Facebook. At first he didn't believe it. Then she sent a baby photo of herself in the NICU. He remembered the name of the hospital. He did his own digging, and then he exploded. He showed up at my door screaming, accused me of kidnapping, of destroying his chance to be a father. He said he would have taken her, that he was just scared at the time, not a monster. He claimed I stole his blood and that I had no right to lie. I told him he abandoned her before she was even born. He said I had no idea what he was going through at the time, that his then-girlfriend had just miscarried, and he couldn't handle the guilt of having one child coming into the world while losing another. He said I played God, that I manipulated everyone. And maybe he's right. Now lawyers are involved. He wants partial custody. He's trying to legally challenge paternity, claiming I falsified documents. He might succeed. Ellie is confused. She says she still loves me, that I'm her real dad. But she wants to know Dave, too. She says she feels like her entire life was a lie. My parents are divided. My mom is on my side. My dad says what I did was unforgivable but understandable. Friends are backing away, even I don't know if I deserve to keep her. So Reddit, tell me, am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for exposing my wife's fake infertility and blowing up our entire friend group and family dynamic in one night? This is going to sound like something out of a soap opera, but I swear every word is true, and I honestly don't know if I'm the monster here or the only one who refused to keep playing pretend. I, 35 have been married to my wife, Jenna, 33F, for almost 8 years. We met through mutual friends, hit it off fast and got married within 2 years. Jenna is charismatic, stylish, and makes everything look effortless. She's also a master at curating appearances. I used to find it endearing. Now I'm not so sure. For the past 6 years, Jenna and I have been trying to have kids, or that's what I thought. We went through what I believed were all the appropriate channels: ovulation tracking, fertility appointments, specialist consultations. She always seemed a little vague about the medical side. She claimed she had unusual hormone levels and was undergoing private treatment. Every time I asked to come to appointments or review test results, she'd say things like, "It's embarrassing, just trust me," or "It's not the kind of thing you want your husband to see." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. In the meantime, our friends were having babies left and right. We'd show up to gender reveals, baby showers, christenings. Jenna would paste on a supportive smile and whisper to me, "Someday soon, babe." My heart would ache for her. For us. I was patient. I held her when she cried. I defended her to family members who dared imply she was taking too long. Then came the moment everything started to crack. About 6 months ago, I found out my insurance wasn't covering a fertility consultation she claimed we'd done. I called the clinic she mentioned, and they had no record of either of us. I asked Jenna about it, and she got furious, like screaming, accusing me of violating her privacy, how she was already humiliated enough, etc. I backed off, even apologized, thinking maybe I'd touched a nerve. But the seed was planted. I started checking things quietly. The fertility supplements in her cabinet were just over-the-counter vitamins. The private specialist she mentioned in another city? I Googled him. He was a chiropractor. The hormone test results in her drawer, forged. I know because the letterhead had a typo in the clinic's name. I confronted her. Gently at first. She broke down crying, told me she felt like a failure, like she couldn't bear to see me disappointed. I asked her point blank, "Are you infertile or not?" She didn't answer. Eventually, after 3 days of cold silence, and then another round of yelling and tears, she confessed the truth. She'd never tried to get pregnant. Not once. Not even in the beginning. She was on birth control the entire time, pills she kept in an unmarked vitamin bottle. She claimed she was protecting me, that she was never sure she wanted to be a mom, but she loved me and thought I'd leave her if she told me the truth. I was numb. I asked her if she ever planned to tell me. She said maybe someday, maybe after she was ready, that she thought she'd grow into the idea. I left the house for 2 days and stayed with my brother. When I came back, she was acting like everything was fine, like we'd had a bad fight and now it was time to move forward. But I couldn't unhear it. I couldn't unfeel it. She'd stolen 6 years of my life chasing a dream she never intended to give me. Every painful moment, the sympathy cards, the awkward conversations, the gut-wrenching envy when our friends announced pregnancies, all based on a lie. I told her we were going to couples therapy or I was done. She agreed, but the sessions were a joke. She twisted everything into being about my obsession with being a father and how I pressured her by merely existing with a desire to have children. Now, here's where it gets messier. 3 weeks ago, we were invited to our close friend Amanda's birthday dinner. It was a big event, 30 people at a rented hall, mostly old college friends and family. Jenna insisted we go. I didn't want to, but I went. I think part of me wanted to see how she acted around people who didn't know she'd been lying. For years, and act she did. She played the part of the graceful wife enduring a cruel twist of fate. People asked how she was holding up. She told them about the treatments, how hard it was, how she felt like less of a woman. I stood next to her, listening to her manipulate everyone, making me complicit in the lie by just existing beside her. At one point, Amanda's sister made a toast and said something like, "To Jenna and my name. We all know what you've been through. We're rooting for your miracle." And Jenna started crying. Crying, that was it for me. I got up, took the mic, and I said something like, "Thank you for the kind words, but I feel like everyone here deserves to know that Jenna isn't infertile. She's been lying about it for years. She never even tried to get pregnant. She's been on birth control the entire time and only admitted it a few weeks ago. So no, miracle is coming, because there was never an effort." The room exploded, gasps, whispers. A few people even laughed nervously, thinking I was joking. Jenna turned white, then red, then got up and ran out. Amanda yelled at me for ruining her birthday. Jenna's best friend called me a psychopath. I left before things got worse. Since then, my phone has blown up. Half our friend group is split down the middle. Some say I did what needed to be done, that Jenna was manipulating people and emotionally exploiting their sympathy. Others say I humiliated her publicly, that I should have handled it privately, or left the marriage quietly. Her family, who worship her, sent me a nasty email calling me an abuser and a misogynist. My own mother told me she understands why I did it, but that she wished I'd had more class. Jenna hasn't come home. She's staying with her sister. She's telling people I emotionally tormented her for years and then retaliated when I didn't get my way. So, Reddit, tell me, am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for outing my sister's secret marriage at a family gathering and ruining her relationship with our parents? So, I, 29F, have one sibling, my younger sister, Claire, 26F. Growing up, we were close in the way siblings are when they share a room and a lot of life experiences. We weren't best friends, but we leaned on each other. Our family is what I'd describe as appearances-obsessed traditional. My dad is a surgeon, my mom a former pageant queen turned PTA, tyrant, and they've always cared deeply about what others think, and I mean deeply. Like when I got a C in calculus once, my mom cried because she was worried the neighbors would think she was a bad parent. That kind of vibe. Claire has always been the golden child. Prettier, quieter, more graceful, better at keeping her mouth shut when our parents were being ridiculous. She played the violin, wore pearls by age 10, and was crowned homecoming queen while I was still fighting with acne and getting detention for skipping gym. She was good at being what they wanted. I wasn't. I went no contact with our parents for about 2 years in my early 20s after a huge fight when I dropped out of med school and became a freelance photographer instead. It was one of the lowest points in my life. I was broke, alone, trying to prove I could be something outside of their expectations. Claire didn't pick sides, but she didn't check in much either. She'd text occasionally, but always something like, "Mom's asking about you. Should I say anything?" Not exactly warm and fuzzy, but I didn't hold it against her. She was living under their roof and playing their game. Eventually, I rebuilt myself, got steady work with a wedding photography agency, moved cities, and began dating my now fiancé, Ben, 31M. Slowly, I re-established a very cautious relationship with my parents. Things were civil, not warm, but manageable. Now here's where the drama begins. 3 months ago, my parents hosted a family reunion at our house. It was the first big event since I'd started seeing them again, and they made a huge deal about having the whole family together. Claire was there, of course, and she brought her boyfriend, Daniel, 28M, who she introduced to everyone, as her partner. They'd supposedly been dating for 2 years, and while my parents hadn't met him before, they were pretty warm toward him, at least publicly. He's a nice guy, quiet, respectful, works in tech, kind of nerdy. Honestly, I was shocked she'd never introduced him to them before, since he seemed so parent-approved. At one point during the night, Claire pulled me aside, clearly nervous, and told me she had something to tell me, but I had to promise not to say anything. I thought she was going to confess she was pregnant or something, but no. She tells me, "I'm married, we eloped last year." I must have blinked 100 times. I was like, "What the actual hell do you mean you're married?" She explained that she and Daniel got married at City Hall on their anniversary, because it felt right and they didn't want a big wedding or drama. She swore it wasn't a secret out of shame, just they weren't ready to tell anyone, especially our parents. She said she planned to break the news soon, but couldn't handle it that night. She looked at me, eyes wide, and said, "Please, please don't say anything, not tonight." And I agreed. At the time, it didn't seem like my place, except here's where things twist. About an hour later, I was in the kitchen getting a drink and overheard my mum talking to one of her high society friends. She was laughing about how sweet Claire and Daniel were and how they're taking it slow the old-fashioned way, unlike some people who just shack up with their boyfriends with no ring. That jab was aimed at me. My mum hates that Ben and I live together but aren't married yet. It set something off in me. Maybe it was the years of judgment, the way she always used Claire as the yardstick I could never measure up to, or maybe it was just raw rage at the hypocrisy of it all. But I snapped. I turned around and said loud enough for most people nearby to hear, "That's funny, Mom, considering Claire's been married for a year and didn't even tell you." The entire room went silent. My mom turned purple. Claire looked like I'd slapped her across the face. Daniel dropped his drink. My dad stood up like he was about to give a TED talk. And I just walked out of the room and into the backyard, with my wine feeling simultaneously horrified and, I'll admit, a little vindicated. All hell broke loose after that. My parents dragged Claire into the study for a private conversation that lasted over an hour. People started leaving early. Daniel was white as a ghost. I didn't see Claire again that night. The next day, I got a 5-paragraph text from Claire telling me I'd ruined her life. She said our parents were furious and called her deceitful and ungrateful. She said they were threatening to cut her off financially. They were helping with her grad school tuition. She accused me of betraying her trust, humiliating her, and doing it just to get back at our parents through her. I replied with, "You shouldn't have put me in that position if you didn't want the truth coming out. We haven't spoken since. My parents, weirdly enough, have been more cordial with me lately. I think they see me as the honest one, now, which is both ironic and nauseating. Claire blocked me on everything. Even Ben thinks I went too far, and he's usually the first to defend me when it comes to family drama. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for staging my own death to escape my toxic marriage? And now I'm being hunted by my own family? This is a story that I'm still trying to process myself. I never thought I would have to do something like this. But now that I've done it, I can't help but wonder if I went too far. The emotions are still raw and the consequences are still haunting me. I've spent countless nights lying awake, wondering if I could have done things differently. But what's done is done. Let me give you some context. I'm Leah, 28F, and I've been married to my husband, Matt, 32M, for 5 years. On the surface, we had a perfect marriage. At least, that's what everyone around us thought. We met when I was just 22, fresh out of college, full of hope and dreams for the future. Matt was everything I thought I wanted. Charming, successful, a little bit older and wiser. He treated me like a queen in the beginning, always buying me flowers, taking me out to fancy restaurants and showering me with attention. But as the years went on, things changed, and I began to realize that I wasn't the queen I thought I was. Matt wasn't a bad person, not in the traditional sense. He wasn't abusive, not physically anyway, but he was emotionally manipulative in ways that I didn't understand at first. He had a way of making me feel small, insignificant. Everything was always my fault, no matter what went wrong. If something went wrong at work, he would blame me. If we had a disagreement, he would twist my words to make me the villain. And when I tried to stand up for myself, he would shut me down with his charm and smooth talk, convincing me that I was just being overly sensitive or irrational. For years, I felt like I was living in a fog, not knowing what was real and what wasn't. But the turning point came about 2 years ago, when I discovered something that shattered me to my core. I had been working late one night, and when I came home I found Matt on the phone in our bedroom, speaking in hushed tones. At first, I thought it was just a work call, but then I heard him say something that made my blood run cold. He was talking to another woman, but it wasn't just any conversation. It was intimate. He was telling her that he loved her, that she was the one he truly wanted, that I was just someone to keep up appearances with. That's when the world as I knew it fell. Apart, I confronted him, and of course he denied everything at first. But I could see it in his eyes. He knew he'd been caught. He admitted to the affair, but he made it clear that he wasn't sorry. In fact, he seemed almost relieved. He told me that he had been unhappy in our marriage for years, but he didn't know how to leave me. He said I was too dependent on him, that I couldn't survive without him, and that he had been carrying me for too long. And in that moment I realized something I had known deep down for a while. I had been trapped in a toxic marriage, one where I had no power, no control. He was right. I couldn't survive without him. I had no money of my own, no career, no real friends. Everything in my life was tied to him. I tried to leave, but he wouldn't let me. He threatened to ruin me, to make sure that I would never have a life without him. He said he would take everything from me, my family, my friends, and most importantly, my reputation. He even told me that if I left him, he would destroy me, in a way that no one would believe my side of the story. His influence and connections were vast, and I was nothing. I would never get away from him, and that's when I realized I had no choice but to escape. But how? He controlled everything. Everything except for one thing, my life. I spent the next few months planning my escape, meticulously constructing a story that would make my departure look like something else entirely. I decided to fake my own death. I know, it sounds insane, but after everything he said to me, I knew that nothing short of a drastic move would give me the freedom I needed. I had to disappear. I couldn't just leave. Matt would find me, hunt me down, and destroy everything I had left. But if I were dead, he wouldn't be able to touch me. The plan was set. I started telling people I was going on a trip, Solo vacation just to clear my head. I arranged for a close friend to take a flight out of the country on the same day I planned to disappear, and we made sure that the flight paths were similar. The idea was that my body would be found in a remote location, far enough from the city to make it look like I had been traveling and got into some kind of accident. I even made sure to leave behind a fake suicide note, making it seem like I had been struggling with depression and could no longer cope with life. I knew it was a lie, but it was the only way to make Matt believe I was really gone. The night of my disappearance, I took the last steps of my plan. I hired a private investigator to create a staged scene that would look like a car crash. The investigator had connections to people who could help with the details, and they made sure the evidence was just convincing enough to make it seem like I had died in an accident. I left my old life behind, disappearing without a trace. I moved across the country, got a new identity, and started a new life. For the first time in years, I felt free. The weight that had been crushing me for so long was gone. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. I thought I could escape, but I didn't account for one thing: the aftermath. Matt's reaction to my supposed death was predictable. He was devastated, of course. He put on a good show for the public, but I knew the truth. Behind closed doors, he was furious. He knew something was off, but he didn't know how or why. It didn't take long for him to start digging, trying to find out what had really happened. And the worst part, he found out that I was alive. He tracked down my new identity, and now he's hunting me. He's been sending me threatening messages, trying to convince me to come back. He says that if I don't, he'll ruin my new life, just like he said he would. And now my family has joined in, accusing me of abandoning them, saying I'm a coward for leaving. They don't understand why I did it. They're upset that I didn't reach out to them before making such a drastic decision. They don't know the truth about Matt, and they don't know how suffocating it felt to be in that marriage. I've been living in constant fear for months now, wondering when Matt will show up at my door, or when my family will finally come to their senses and turn against me. I'm scared, I'm alone, but I don't regret what I did. I did what I had to do to survive. So, Reddit, I'm asking, am I the a-hole for staging my own death to escape my toxic marriage? Should I have handled things differently? Or was I justified in doing what I did, even if it meant abandoning everyone I knew and loved? Am I the a-hole for blackmailing my husband after discovering his darkest secret and using it to destroy his career? I never thought I would be here, sitting in front of my computer, typing out these words. I always considered myself a kind person, not perfect, but not someone who would go to the extremes of hurting the people around me. And yet here I am, questioning if I'm a villain, and if everything I did was really as justified as I thought it was. It's been 3 years since I found out the truth, and the consequences of my actions are still haunting me. So here it goes. This is the story of how I ruined my husband's life, and why, despite the wreckage, I don't regret it. I'm Emma, 32F, and my husband is Daniel, 34M. We've been married for 7 years, and for the most part, we had what seemed like a perfect marriage. People who knew us thought we were the golden couple. He had a high-powered job as a corporate lawyer at a prestigious firm, and I worked in marketing for a tech company. We had a beautiful home, a healthy bank account, and from the outside, it looked like we had everything. But I never really knew what was lurking beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life. It all started when I was going through a difficult time at work. My company had just been bought out by a competitor, and there were massive layoffs. I was on edge, unsure if I would still have a job by the end of the month. On top of that, I had been feeling this growing sense of disconnect with Daniel. He was always so busy with work, often coming home late and barely speaking to me. When we did talk, it was always about his cases, his clients, his work. It felt like I was living in his shadow, like I was just the backdrop to his success. I had always prided myself on being independent, but I couldn't ignore the growing sense of loneliness that had taken over our marriage. One night, after Daniel had gone to bed, I couldn't sleep. I was restless, my mind spinning with worries. about my job, my future, and whether or not we were really in this together anymore. So I did what I had always done when I was feeling anxious. I turned to his phone. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed to calm my mind. I told myself I was just looking for reassurance that everything was okay. I don't know what I was expecting to find, but I certainly wasn't prepared for what I did find. Daniel's phone was unlocked, as it usually was, and I started scrolling through his messages. At first, it was just the usual stuff. Texts from work, his colleagues, some random notifications. But then I stumbled across something that made my stomach turn. It was an email, one that had been sent to him just a few days prior with the subject line, "Your bonus payment." At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed it was some kind of financial update. But as I opened the email, my heart sank. It wasn't just an update. It was an explicit agreement between Daniel and a high-ranking partner at the firm, an agreement about how Daniel was going to secure his promotion to managing partner. The email outlined a financial transaction that involved a bribe. They were planning to hide illegal dealings, laundering money through various shell companies, and Daniel was going to be the one to carry it all out. There was talk of deals with shady figures and how the money was going to be funneled through offshore accounts. And at the end of the email, there was a line that chilled me to the core. "If you don't follow through, Emma will lose her job and the company will backtrack." I froze. My mind was racing, trying to process what I was reading. The weight of what I had just discovered was too much to handle. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just some innocent mistake. This was criminal. Daniel had been involved in money laundering, bribery, and illegal corporate dealings. And worse yet, it seemed like he had dragged me into it in a way that I couldn't even understand. My job, my career, my entire future had been used as leverage to keep him in line. I was shaking. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the email, but I felt like I was losing control of everything. The man I had married, the man I trusted more than anyone in the world, was a criminal. And he had been hiding this from me for years. I couldn't understand why. Why would he keep this secret from me? Why would he risk everything, including me, for this? I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I had so many questions, so many emotions swirling inside me, and I didn't know how to process any of it. The next day, I confronted Daniel. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the anger, the betrayal bubbling up inside me. "Daniel," I said, "we need to talk." He looked at me with a tired expression, as though he had been expecting this conversation. But he didn't know how it would unfold. I pulled out my phone and showed him the email. His face went white as he realized what I had discovered. "I can explain," he said, his voice shaking. "Explain!" I nearly shouted. "You've been lying to me. For years, Daniel. This is beyond anything I ever could have imagined. Why did you do this? Why didn't you tell me?" He tried to defend himself, saying that he had been coerced, that he had no choice, that this was part of the corporate world. But none of it made sense to me. How could he be so cold? How could he keep this from me? And then, a thought crossed my mind. A dark thought. A thought I didn't want to entertain, but I couldn't ignore. What if I used this information for my own gain? What if I turned the tables on him and used his secret against him? It wasn't a decision I made lightly. But in that moment, as the realization of everything I had been living through crashed down on me, I made a choice. I would destroy him. I would use this secret to ruin his career the way he had ruined mine. I wouldn't just expose him. I would make sure he felt every ounce of pain he had put me through. I waited a week. During that time, I carefully crafted my plan. I reached out to the firm's compliance department anonymously, attaching the email and other incriminating evidence I had found on his phone. I made sure they knew everything: the money laundering, the bribes, the illegal deals he had made. I even added a few of my own personal touches to the story, making sure they knew just how deep Daniel had gone into this mess. When the investigation started, it didn't take long for the entire firm to unravel. Daniel was put under intense scrutiny, and his career, his life, had begun to fall apart. His promotion was rescinded, he was placed on leave, and within months, he was fired. He tried to fight it, but it was clear that his involvement in the illegal dealings had left him with no way out. When I finally confronted him, after everything had gone down, he looked broken. He was a shell of the man I once loved. and for the first time I felt no sympathy for him. I felt nothing. I had taken everything from him, and I didn't regret it. But here's the kicker. Now, years later, I'm starting to wonder if I did the right thing. Yes, he betrayed me. Yes, he lied to me. But did I have the right to ruin his entire life? Did I go too far? I've lost friends. I've lost his family. I've even lost my job because people found out what I did. I'm alone now. But I'm wondering if I deserve the guilt that I feel. So here I am, sitting alone asking myself, am I the a-hole for using his darkest secret to destroy him?